This video contains spoilers for the featured film. All images used belong to their respective copyright owners and are used here for commentary and criticism purposes only. Please remember that statements made are my own opinion and you are free to disagree in the comments, but please do so respectfully. Hey there, Alley Cats, and welcome back to Movie Monday. Today, we're going to be pissing off some Marvel fanboys while we review and discuss the newest MCU film, Spider-Man: Far From Home. I'd like to take a quick second to remind everyone again that we don't always have to have the same opinions on something. That's totally okay. What's not okay is being an absolute butthole because someone doesn't view a certain movie as sheer perfection like you might. Since some of you seem to have forgotten that for the Avengers Endgame review. Even though I gave that one a good score, I don't get it. But just remember that and we'll be completely fine. If you'd like to skip the plot overview and get right to my thoughts on this movie, you can skip to this timestamp in the video. So with that said, let's get right into it. 8 months after the events of Avengers Endgame, we start in Mexico, where Nick Fury and Maria Hill arrive to a destroyed city after the citizens reported the cyclone that caused the destruction had a face. A superpowered man suddenly appears along with a giant rock monster, and the man goes to fight it. We then head over to the high school of Peter Parker, where everyone mourns the loss of Tony Stark and kinda the other Avengers who died, like Black Widow and Vision and Steve Rogers, since he's presumed dead by the public, I guess. But nah, Tony is way more important than all of them, so his death gets more attention. Just gonna gloss right over all the rest. The academic school year has restarted to accommodate those who were disintegrated from Thanos' snap, or the blip as it's now referred to. Peter's class is preparing for a trip to Europe because that should totally be high on the priority list shortly after half the school was non-existent for 5 years, and while they're abroad, Peter plans to confess his feelings to MJ. At a fundraiser for the homeless organized by Aunt May, Peter is approached by Happy Hogan to inform him that Nick Fury will be calling him soon. However, Peter ignores all of his calls so he can take a break from being Spider-Man and get away from the pressure of being expected to replace Tony as the new Iron Man and leader of the Avengers. After a failed attempt to sit next to MJ on the plane, they arrive in Venice, and shortly after the class starts venturing around, a giant water monster appears and wreaks havoc on the city. The mystery man from earlier swiftly arrives, and with Peter's help, they are able to defeat it. Later that night, as Peter and his friend Ned go back to their room, Ned is knocked out by a very annoyed Nick Fury, who scolds Peter for ghosting him. He gives him a final gift from Tony Stark, his glasses with a sad farewell message, which is really confusing how this is even a thing because at the end of Avengers Endgame, Tony obviously had no idea he'd be dying, and Peter only returned from Blipland like 10 minutes before his death during the final battle with Thanos. So unless Tony took a break from fighting to scribble out this note, we've got some major plot hole issues here, but anyways. Nick Fury brings Peter to meet the superpowered man introduced as Quentin Beck, or Mysterio, claiming to be from the Earth of a different reality which was destroyed by the elemental monsters. There is one final monster, the Fire Elemental, expected to appear in Prague within a couple days. But Peter declines to help, wanting to instead continue on his class trip when they proceed to Paris, and Nick allows him to go. The next day, the trip suddenly has been diverted to Prague. What a coincidence! I'm sure Nick totally didn't have anything to do with that. On the bus, Peter puts on the glasses Tony left for him, which are equipped with an AI named Edith that contains access to the databases of Stark Industries with control of an orbital weapon supply. At a pit stop, Peter meets up with one of Nick's female associates for a new suit, and by random happenstance, Peter's rival for MJ's affection wanders into the room when Peter just happens to be taking his pants off. So he snaps a pic, intent on showing MJ and ruining Peter's chances with her. So, back on the bus, Peter tries to get help from Edith to get rid of the picture, but in the process, almost accidentally gets the guy killed with a drone. So, there's that. Once arriving in Prague, Nick tampers with the group's itinerary again to send them to the Opera House instead of the local carnival out in the open to keep them safe, though several students, including MJ, sneak out anyway, because these teachers are so attentive and really good at their job. Fire Elemental appears at a carnival and starts growing, but Peter and Mysterio join forces and defeat it! So we're done now, right? No. MJ picks up some gadget thingy covered in webs from the battle and sneaks off, and Mysterio and Peter go for a drink where Peter decides to transfer the Edith glasses, the only thing Tony left for him, to someone he just met like 2 days ago. This totally can't go wrong, so of course it does. Once Peter leaves, it's revealed Mysterio is the bad guy. Oh man, one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains from the comics turns out to have evil intentions? What a surprise! He gives this very long dramatic speech thanking each individual person for their contributions, and all of these folks are disgruntled former employees of Tony, including Mysterio himself, who designed the hologram program we very briefly saw, I think, in Iron Man 3. That's how insignificant it was. I don't even remember what movie it was from. So all the elementals were fake, and people believed his silly multi-reality story, and for what? He wants to become a real superhero and basically replace Iron Man and be loved and adored by the world. I don't think he thought this whole plan through of fighting holograms, since if he did become an Avenger and a real threat appeared, he'd be massively screwed, but whatever. Meanwhile, Peter goes to hang out with MJ and she says she knows he is Spider-Man, showing the gadget she picked up, which is one of the protectors, and Peter realizes he's been duped. He goes to meet with Nick Fury in Berlin and stupidly tells him that his friends know about Mysterio's fakery, and turns out, surprise, that was also an illusion, and Peter basically put a target on all his friends' backs. Way to go, dude. While he's stuck in an illusion, he ends up getting hit by a train, and Mysterio decides that's good enough for eliminating Peter, and he totally doesn't need to check if he's actually dead. So of course, Peter's not actually dead and ends up riding the train all the way to the Netherlands. He contacts Happy Hogan, who picks up Peter in a fancy jet with a very convenient suit-making machine that allows Peter to customize a brand new suit. Now in London, dear God, we're literally just going all over Europe, aren't we? Mysterio is on a bridge planning his biggest illusion yet, which is a fusion of all 4 elementals, while also plotting to kill Nick Fury and Maria Hill, in addition to MJ, Ned, and Ned's girlfriend, who all know Mysterio is a fake. There's a lengthy battle with a bunch of the drones. Peter gets smacked off the bridge with a car, and once again, Mysterio just shrugs and says, okay, he definitely must be dead now. So Peter quickly returns, but gets wrapped up in another illusion, but he uses his Spidey sense, or Peter Tingle, as it's called here, to evade the drones, and Mysterio gets hit by a stray bullet and dies. And Peter takes the glasses back, even though Mysterio didn't transfer them to Peter like Peter had to do for him, so more plot holes. But Peter gets with MJ, they all go back to New York, and happy ending! Until the mid-credits scene when news reporter J. Jonah Jameson, reprised by J.K. Simmons, shows a doctored video made by Mysterio before he died, blaming Peter for the elemental attacks and his death, and revealing his secret identity to the world. In the post-credits scene, Nick Fury and Maria Hill are revealed to be the Skrulls Talos and Soren for the entire movie, while the real Nick is on a Skrull ship. If you guys follow my Movie Monday series, then you'll know I'm still relatively new to the MCU franchise. When Avengers Endgame was released, that was the first video I posted for the revival of Movie Monday, and I spent the weeks leading up to the release catching up on the series. So for the most part, it's still pretty fresh in my mind. I also mentioned that one of the highlights of my MCU binging experience was Spider-Man Homecoming, largely due to Tom Holland's on-screen presence, so I really had high hopes for Far From Home going into this movie. As with all MCU movies, it's overall pretty solid. The acting for most is spot on, the humor and comic relief is mostly genuinely funny, albeit a bit cringy at times with Peter's teenage awkwardness, but it never really goes over the top or takes away from more serious moments. And it's just a very entertaining and fun time. However, while I'm sure I'm facing the wrath of the mega fans, I have to say there are some problems that really bug me more than the average MCU film. While it was good overall, there's no part that stuck out to me as epically amazing. The most memorable part was the mid-credits scene, which is actually kind of sad and really shouldn't be the case for a film like this. To an extent, it didn't even really feel like a Spider-Man movie until about halfway through, though that is largely because Peter is so resistant to being a superhero for the time being. The action also gets a bit too fast in some parts for my liking, especially during a lot of the illusion sequences and the final battle between Spider-Man and Mysterio, so it's a little difficult to keep up at times, but it wasn't too bad. That's mostly just me being kinda picky. On the other hand, I have got to talk about MJ, or as I like to call her, angsty fake Mary Jane. I would have had absolutely no problem with Zendaya portraying Mary Jane Watson. That is not my issue at all. And I don't expect these movies to strictly follow the source material 100%, but to completely scratch a classic loved character and replace her with an edgy, conspiracy theory obsessed wannabe punk with the same nickname, it's just insulting. When it was announced Zendaya was gonna play MJ, everyone assumed they meant Mary Jane, but nope, psych. She's got this constant attitude of, I'm too good for you and everyone else, that I just really cannot stand in a character that we're supposed to like. She's got no chemistry with Peter whatsoever. The only reason they get together at all is because the plot demands it, but it's so forced because they just don't go together and their personalities clash way too much. It's not even a cutesy type of awkward to see them together, it's just uncomfortable. And if I sound salty about this, it's because I am. In the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man series, Kirsten Dunst did a pretty solid job in her role as Mary Jane. Then in the Andrew Garfield version, as opinionated as people are about it, I was still excited because this time around Mary Jane would be played by one of my favorite actresses, Shailene Woodley, but then they cut her scenes from the final movie. Then they strongly implied the return of the character for this franchise, but we just got the rug pulled out from under us and we're left with this obnoxious knockoff character. What else really bothered me though was Mysterio with his multiple annoying villain cliches. They had something good with his character, as predictable as it was, and in my opinion, some of the best villains are the ones who can be sympathized with because they're doing bad things, but for potentially good reasons. Someone who, if we were following them instead throughout the movie, they could maybe even be seen as the good guy. So I really liked the idea of Mysterio and him just wanting to be a superhero and be loved and adored by everyone, but when he's attempting to kill Peter and won't do it himself and lets either a speeding train or a falling car do the work for him, and he doesn't even bother to check whether he's actually dead twice, thus allowing Peter an easy way to come back and defeat him, he definitely loses some bad guy credibility for that. Gotta deduct even more points for that god-awful speech once it's revealed Mysterio is the villain after Peter gives him the Edith glasses. Because of course, he's got to explain every single facet of his master plan, describe his backstory, talk about everyone's role in this operation, which is information the characters obviously know, but I guess they wanted to do it for the audience's sake, which I feel like could have been done much better and a lot more subtly than, hey you, person we saw X number of movies ago, you did this, and that was your job, and you've been so helpful in doing this for me. Basically that, but for many people over the course of like 5 minutes. It's just one of those instances that really takes you out of the moment of the film. And the longer it drags on, the more I just wanted to shout, okay, we get it, move on already. We get the picture. Don't underestimate the intelligence of the audience just to over-explain the bad guy's scheme. I'd expect something like this from a B-rated superhero movie, not a long-standing multi-billion-dollar franchise with high standards and expectations for their productions. Since the problems I mentioned are very specific and the overall film itself is fine, this is an easy fix. Cut out the stupid cliches with Mysterio. That way, he's a much more competent villain, and I don't feel like pulling out my hair listening to that irritating exposition speech. That's supposed to be a big, shocking reveal moment. Don't ruin it with nonsense like this. Other than that, I think Mysterio as a character is completely fine, unlike MJ, who should never have been written the way she is. Maybe I'm the only one who feels this way, which is fine, but I just cannot support Peter and MJ as a couple because of how little chemistry they have together. The original Mary Jane character would have fit in much better, and she's always been Peter's main love interest for a reason. The saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, would apply here very well. And also, definitely pay more attention to the plot in general. I don't expect these movies to be perfect, but we're on number 20-something in the franchise, and these glaring plot holes, like with the glasses, are really distracting and gives the impression of the writers being lazy, because they don't always take events from previous films into account. The movie is still very enjoyable, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't mean they need to rush these movies into theaters without taking the time to consider all the details. With that being said, I'm going to give Spider-Man Far From Home my personal score of 7 out of 10, which is still pretty good. I don't want to see y'all raising up your torches and pitchforks in the comments. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and if you have any suggestions for movies I should discuss and review in the future. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye!